the budgeting for this, that like 125,000. And so most of that will go towards the high school. And the rest will be just the, what do you call it, the general cover of the ceiling of all the parking lots.
That's the bad thing
And that
about it.
runs
You go to
about
the
30.
back parking lot, and when you leave that back parking lot, you go, oh my gosh, it's such a big difference, of how nice and smooth with the new parking lot it is. So,
Okay, if no other questions on the high school, we'll move on to RJ Basket. And we've allotted $25,000 there in rainy day fund maximum for painting, for flooring for the interior of RJ Basket. That doesn't mean that it'll be limited to $15,000, but that's the limit the corporation will spend on that. Mrs. Eckstein may choose to spend some more of her own money for that purpose, but that's our maximum. And we're going to landscape the Circle Drive, to go back to what somebody said. Well, I think it was you, Mr. Gaskin, about getting in the grass. We got people in that driveway getting on the grass, and so we're going to put some landscaping on the exterior of that to prevent people from getting into the grass area. So we've allotted $10,000 for that. So, any questions on the middle school? Okay, Northview is probably one of the more, the elementaries are obviously more expensive because of what we got going there with HVAC. And this is all rainy day fund. Additional security cameras at Northview at an estimated cost of $10,000. Chalkboards for whiteboards in the estimated amount of $5,000. Paint and flooring in the amount of an estimate of $15,000. Main office countertops, flooring, cabinets, et cetera, $5,000. And this is a big item that we just added, HVAC in the gym, and that'll be estimated at, I think he's already got an old estimate, and it's around $200,000. We would like to get done by 2021 all of the HVAC at the two elementaries. So virtually we would be really close to that. That would leave only one thing left to do at Northview, and that would be there's 10 heat cooling pumps that need to be replaced, and that'll cost about $150,000. So we've already asked Jill to budget for that for next summer 2021. We're finishing the HVAC at Westview with the exception of the gym. So we may or may not do the gym until 2022 at Westview. We'll see. And then the other thing is the gym sound system needs some improvements, and we're estimating that at $5,000. So any questions about Northview? Okay, go to Westview. The central office, the business manager had budgeted money a year out for the HVAC and in the office area of Westview, and that's estimated at $190,000. The other three items are rainy day funds, paint and flooring at $10,000, updating the student restrooms at $60,000, and what we're thinking of there is that that's a school that is exclusively for preschool, kindergarten, first grade. Preschool is a relatively new aspect to Westview. When that building was built way before preschool existed, and so we're going to, with the $60,000 allotted, do as much as we can about lowering some of the toilets and the urinals to better accommodate 3 through 5-year-olds. And so we'll do that. That's something we can do in stages. So we'll just set aside so much money every year until we get that accomplished the way we want it. Outdoor classroom, including fencing and playground equipment, $25,000 has been allotted. Any question on Westview? We allotted that same amount to Westview last year, but they didn't spend it, so we're we're continuing with that. Whenever the plans are ready and the PTO and so on have collaborated and all the school educational, I know there's been planning going on for a year now or so, that's what we've allotted as a corporation to that process. Any questions on Westview? Okay, we have a roofing plan that's long-term for all the roofs in the corporation. The central office was considered the roof in the worst shape when we started the planning and started the process. We are phasing that in over a 4 or 5 year span. Last year, I think we spent $40,000 to $50,000 on that. We have budgeted $98,200 for that, and that was budgeted for a year ago. So that's part of the long-term planning. And sealing the parking lots at all 5 buildings, estimated $35,000 to $40,000. But we have budgeted $125,000, including the high school parking lot. And so we're going to try really hard not to let that go over that amount. So, any questions on anything we've talked about? Okay. That's all we have on facilities this evening.
Any questions from the board or comments?
When you compare last year's budget for this to this year's budget, including what the principals will be able to spend, how does that work out? About the same? A little less?
I don't know exactly how much they'll end up spending. If they've got money towards the end of the calendar year, though, if they've got any projects that we were thinking of doing that we haven't got to yet because of money, we're going to spend it out. So
So
comparing,
you're assuming it'd be
I
fairly
think it's
equal?
pretty comparable.
Yeah, okay.
I think it'll end up pretty comparable. I think typically we spend about $800,000, and I think this is $650 or so, and that's without the, that's without Ted's general maintenance costs being included, and that's without the building budgets being included. So I think it'll be comparable.
Any other questions? We don't require a motion, so let's move to 49, legislative update. Mr. Cunningham.
Thank you, Mr. President. I had the opportunity to attend ISBA's Legislative Day last Tuesday, February the 11th, and it's always informative to go and talk to other, we were seated, we're Region 5, so we were seated with a bunch of other corporations that were in our area, primarily Carmel Clay Schools. And I was telling Mrs. Varner, as soon as I introduced myself, before I could get Mississinewa out, she was raving about our robotics program. And I thought, boy, what a pleasure to feel like we're ahead of Carmel Clay in what we do, but about our robotics program. So, and she was, because of the unique name of Mississinewa, she was talking about, you guys win everything in robotics, and was talking about wanting to make a visit as so you may be getting contact from her. But anyway, had so part of this agenda was to hear from a panel of speakers about priorities that they felt like in legislation. And so the legislative panel that was there was the President Pro Tem, Rod Bray, Representative Bob Brenning, who's the House Education Chair, Representative Ed Delaney, and he's a member of Education Ways and Means, Senator Melton, that's again a member of Senate Education and Career Development, and then Senator Rotz. So they did a very thorough job of going through all the different things that they felt like education-wise. One of those, teacher salaries, was a big focus. Most of them wanted salaries to sort of be the priority with the rainy day fund that the state has. But the governor sort of superseded that and went for infrastructure. And so they're wanting to make that a priority in next legislative session. So we had a luncheon, and while we didn't have specifically anyone that I felt like represented our area that was there, I asked for our representative. I asked for Ann Vermillion to sent her a reply. She's a freshman House of Representative, so she's just learning. So she wasn't able to attend, but I did get to talk to someone that's from our county, which is Michael Karakoff, and he sat right next to me, and we talked about education. He's been on there a long time, 64 years old, so he was talking about all the changes that had happened in education, so it was a good talk with him. In reviewing legislation, so ISBA came up with priorities that they had done from soliciting from all the other corporation legislative representatives, and then also from their legislative team from ISBA. So I'm just going to highlight those items that have a bill attached to them, because just for the sake of time. And I have a book here that they gave. I wanted to get some extra copies, and they people had already scarfed those up. But I'd be happy to share any of it or loan it out or make copies. But one of those was increased financial. So legislative priorities. One of those was increased financial resources to support K-12 students. And the bill that is currently still alive and addressing that is House Bill 1204. And this basically looks at two ADM counts, and to make sure that school corporations don't get penalized by because there'll be two ADM counts. But it also removes the cap for the amount of career and technical education enrollment grants that may be distributed per state fiscal year. And by doing so, that will result in approximately $21 million available to schools for CTE programs in fiscal year 21. And of course, there's also regulations, some additional regulations in there for virtual charter schools. So 1204, that's one we'll be looking at. Item 2 was enhanced teacher recruitment and retention programs. Senate Bill 244, teacher supplemental pay. Basically, what I liked about this is it's still, I'm always worried about when the state sets an amount that someone is supposed to pay. I think that needs to be local control. So I may differ with some of my friends on the board, but I don't want the state telling me that every teacher is going to make $50,000 a year, because that could bankrupt some corporations, but it may be less than what other corporations might want to pay. So
the cost of living's different too in every community.
Right, and I guess that's the thing, is I always want that to be local. I want them to give us the funding, but I want us to decide how that needs to be distributed. So this is one of those things that sort of deals with that, is that it establishes additional circumstances, including completion of credential requirements to teach dual credit classes, for which a school corporation may provide supplemental payments to teachers in excess of salary specified in the school corporation's compensation plan. So, but what it does is it's going to lay out a framework that allows you to be able to do that. You establish it locally, but funding for that would be available. One of the items that they hit on, but it doesn't have any legislation, and probably because that will impact next legislative budget cycle, but expanding pre-K and kindergarten programs. No bills were in that, obviously, because of that, but they were stating that this will be a priority for the next legislative session. So that's something that we'll want to follow closely because of what we want to do with and what we've been doing with pre-K. The other item was school board vote on local redevelopment commissions. There's actually a couple of bills that address this. House Bill 1291 establishes that board representation from the school corporation on any redevelopment commissions. And that would be after December 31st of 2020, a member of the governing body of the school corporation within that territory, or if there's multiple corporations, a member of the governing body of the school corporation would be would have an opportunity to serve as a member of the redevelopment commission. Primary reason for that is property tax funding that we get. So if they give someone tax abatement, that affects us. So we want to be able to have a voice, not that we necessarily would oppose it, but to be able to have a voice in what happens with that. And then in that same item, Senate Bill 260, education funding, again, in part, it requires a redevelopment commission to provide notice of an adoption of a resolution concerning an area of need in the redevelopment. So if that does occur, the president, so the superintendent of each corporation, so that they know what's coming. So you have an opportunity to know what's coming, to be able to budget and not be finding out after the fact that you were going to have money that was not going to be allocated to you. So again, that was Senate Bill 260. Let's see. So assistance for financially distressed schools. There's no bill that's in there now, but I thought this was an interesting statistic about schools around the state that due to circuit breaker and tax caps since 2000, from 2000 to 2019 on average, school corporations have lost 11% of their budget based on tax caps and circuit breakers.
Ours is up to $250,000 a year.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what I'd have to think about what that computes out to percentage-wise of our overall budget, but it's significant for our
Yeah.
school our size to.
So there's no legislation again this session, but they're talking about developing an analytic where they can. This is what President Pro Tem Bray talked about, as an analytic to be able to look at that, so that the assumption isn't that school corporations are mismanaging their budget. It's the fact that tax caps and circuit breakers are hitting a corporation particularly harder than maybe another corporation. So they're developing a dashboard or something in analytics that they want to put through to be able to look at that and maybe be able to address that funding wise. And I think item 6, capital referendum and ballot language, House Bill 1054. And this is a political subdivision, control projects and debt. So in part, the bill provides that if the estimated increase in a political subdivision's property tax levy for debt service for a proposed control project will be offset in whole or in part because of retirement of existing debt, that can be used as a factor for new projects. So let's see. I was going to see if I think there's just 3 more bills. Deregulation initiatives. House Bill 1003 intends to lessen the annual training requirements for teacher licensure. I just find it interesting that they're talking about less requirements for licensure, but required training to carry a firearm. It just kind of, we want you to be able to be this, but we want to take away from licensure requirements in order to be able to teach. But anyway, that's just me. And then Senate Bill 266, teacher training requires the Department of Education to do the following, and then it creates a whole myriad of things. You guys will want to look at this one.
Back to the training, though. I can understand how you might think that or feel that, but I don't know if you're aware as a board that there's like 17, 18 areas that the state now expects teachers to see webinars on, experience trainings on, how to spot and identify homelessness. There's like 17 or 18 now that are all leaving my head, but bloodborne pathogens has been around for a long time. safety and security, suicide prevention, all these things that, and when you require people to be trained, then you're making them, in my mind, legally accountable for problems that occur in those areas. And I'm not sure that's fair to educators. And I'm certainly convinced that they don't need to see those webinars every year. Maybe every 5 years, but not every year. It's a long litany of webinars and reading pamphlets and so on that teachers are expected to do above and beyond teaching math, science, English, and all the subjects that they have to experience and be accountable for. And I think that's what's behind that law. Is I know that a lot of superintendents are really talking with legislators about reducing this obligation, giving the local district more control over how frequent those experiences are. And so I think that's where that's coming from on that part.
Well, that's what Senator Bray talked about, dropping, looking at and eliminating some of these requirements that have happened, and then they just kind of build on each other. So the last one is tax credits for public schools and public school foundations. And this is Senate Bill 94, tax credit for education donations, provides an adjusted gross income tax credit for donations to public school foundations or school corporations, provides that the maximum individual taxpayer credit is $1,000 and then $2,000 in case of a joint return. And that, I think, is it. There was, like I said, a lot of discussion. I learned a lot from it. They did create if you wanted to go and meet with a legislator, but I've always found it more effective to schedule those on my own, not during a mad dash kind of thing over to the State House. So that's just what I
You really need to take more time for breakfast, though. I noticed your claim was only for a cookie and a coffee for breakfast. So.
Well, they fed us breakfast.
Okay.
They fed us lunch, but I needed a snack.
Okay.
So,
all right.
a cookie and a coffee for
all right.
for the way home.
Well, you deserve a snack. You did a great job with that.
It was. I'm amazed. Our ISBA does a fantastic job.
They do.
One last thing. March 3rd deadline for bills to return from the House to the Senate and from the Senate to the House. If they aren't, they're dead. So by March 3rd, we'll know. So by our next board meeting in March, we'll know what we're going to have to deal with. I should have said, too, several of these legislations that I mentioned, emergency is declared in that act. So as soon as it's passed, it becomes effective. So I can't remember the ones but we were talking about those happening. And if it happened, then we've got to put it in place fairly quickly. So I think I'll let you know when those come up. That's all I have.
Thanks, Chris.
Good job,
Thanks.
Mr. Cunningham.
Anything, Mike, on the board? Got any questions? Well, we'll move on to 50. I guess there's the corporate sponsors, donations, and grants. Mr. McKenzie?
Yes, we have several donations for the board's consideration tonight. From Edward Jones, Mark Siglin of Gas City to the After Prom in the amount of $25. From Autodesk Foundation to the high school prop account in the amount of $200. From the Community Foundation of Grant County to be used for children's health needs, $1,110. From State Farm Insurance, Dennis Roach of Gas City to the After Prom in the amount of $100. From Mike Anderson Chevrolet of Gas City to the After Prom in the amount of $100. And from Sports Hotline to the athletic account in the amount of $200. And so we would recommend approval of these donations as presented this evening. And we're getting close to prom time, apparently. So.
What's the board's pleasure?
Mr. President,
Mr. Herrera?
I'd like to make a motion to accept donations as presented.
Okay. Need a second?
Second.
Mr. Smith. Okay. Are there any questions or comments? I guess I got one. Sports Hotline.
I thought it was defunct, too.
So it was-
They must.
They had a scholarship several years,
Uh-huh.
sports hotline, and it's to the point that it was not enough funds to continue it, so they gave $200 to each Grant County High School.
And then closed it out.
Closing it out.
Close it out, okay, well, that makes sense. Okay, we got anything else from the board, or, okay, hearing none, and we got a motion that's properly seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Claims, Ms. Townsend.
I have two allowance of voucher claims for your approval tonight. The first one is for $670,618.25, and the second is for $1,259,390.65.
Okay. Are there any questions? Okay, entertain a motion.
Mr. President,
Chris,
I make a motion to approve the claims as presented, sir.
need a second?
Second.
Mr. Kraus. Okay. Guys got time to look? Any questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Okay, item 52, correspondence and other business, Mr. McKenzie.
Yeah, I'll start with this. The next board meeting is scheduled for March 9th, and that's already been board approved. But that's 3 weeks, and I know typically it's 2 weeks, but we have 5 weeks in March this year, and and spring break is at the end of that and the 1st of April. And so to try to avoid getting into those and creating an unusual amount of time between the second March meeting and the first April meeting, which has to be delayed because of spring break, we changed it from the 2nd of March to the 9th of March. And I can't remember if we talked about that when that was originally done. So I just wanted to restate that for your understanding. And if you want to go back to March 2nd, we could do that, and you could vote on that tonight. But our recommendation would be to keep things as they are, and the next meeting would be March 9th, and the second meeting would be March 23rd, 14 days later, for the month of March, and that keeps us out of trouble with spring break, the way it's set up for this year. So unless you want to change it, then our next meeting is March 9th as scheduled. As it's already been alluded to earlier, I think by Mr. Cunningham, we've had a lot of activity this past weekend in the science and in the arts, and a lot of successes. I know that Mrs. Winter may have carpal tunnel from all her tweets this weekend in regard and in response to all these activities and success stories. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Mrs. Winter for her comments. And
Before we go in,
Yep.
everybody, the board's over here, all right with the 2 dates? Everybody's okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay,
Sure.
Go ahead.
I'll probably have the principals talk about some of the activities, but the first thing I would like to say is that every single one of our administrators, as well as 16 teachers and paraprofessionals, worked all day Saturday but one in volunteering for that robotics tournament, which I think says an awful lot to volunteer. But I'm going to start with the Scholastic Arts and Writing Contest. We had our first ever winner at Mississinewa Community Schools at RJB, and Taylor Huffman. She won in the writing part of the contest. We had 6 kids as finalists, and we had Mrs. Little selected as Outstanding Art Educator in Indiana, so that was quite an honor. We had 11 Northview Elementary Choir students selected to participate in Circle of the State with song. We had 14 RJ Basket choir members selected to participate in Circle of the State in song, and that is a very prestigious selection to have 25 students from Mississinewa Community School participate in that. Our robotics tournament was this weekend, and I'll let Mr. Burbank was at safety training today and didn't make it back in time, so we'll let Mrs. Barner talk about it. But it just amazed me Saturday at the professionalism of our tournament the state-of-the-art technology that we had for the fans and the record keeping for over 51 teams. We had 70 teams on the waiting list to participate in our tournament. 4 out of our 7 robotics teams have already qualified for the state tournament. We still have a few more opportunities to qualify. But the class that our staff and our students presented themselves in Saturday it was just extraordinary. Something to be very, very proud of. I'll let somebody else talk about our big wrestling win this weekend, but Mrs. Varner or principals, do you want to make any comments about the weekend?
Just to echo what you shared, we had a really successful weekend in our robotics tournament. We keep growing every year. We expanded the number of teams that we allowed to come to our tournament this year up to 51. So that's 11 teams more than we had last year, and we just look forward to continuing to grow. Absolutely what Mrs. Winter said, we could not have done this without the support of all the administrators. So many teachers, so many paraprofessionals came together to make this tournament successful. We received a lot of compliments about our students and the way they carried themselves and their behavior, so that speaks volumes to our teachers and coaches. We're so proud of them. We've had 4 teams qualified to go to state, so March 7th at Lucas Oil Stadium. So far, we'll have 2 middle school and 2 elementary teams participating in that state tournament. And this Saturday, our elementary teams are participating in another event in Plainfield. So they have an opportunity. Our 2 elementary teams that have not yet qualified could still qualify. And then first ever, this is a big deal this Saturday too, our middle school and our high school teams will be competing in the VRC robotics tournament, which is the metal component robots. And so that'll be our first. We haven't done any of those competitions yet. That's in Syracuse. So they have an exciting opportunity this weekend as well to possibly qualify for state and take those metal robots to state as well. So we couldn't be more proud of our program, and it takes everyone kind of working together for that success, and we appreciate the board's support and Mrs. Winter and Mr. McKenzie so much in making this program just continue to grow and be something that our kids can be proud of and successful in. So it was
I think it's a
wonderful.
blessing that Mr. Cunningham said what he did earlier in the Chronicle Tribunes here, and for her to hear the success of our program, K through 12, and that we are going to be competing in medals, which is a much faster and quicker robotics, with the hope to expand that next year into football robotics. So hopefully we'll get an opportunity for you to talk at every level and every principal to hear why we feel robotics is so important to our career pathways and the areas that we're trying to promote with our kids in STEAM education. So thank you for doing that. Any other principals want to comment on the
I
activities
just
this
had a lot
week?
of people stop me, and I did part of the MC Saturday. A lot of people just talked about how organized it was, that they just raved about the facilities. And that's not unique because 2 weeks, or a week and a half prior, we hosted the IHSA girls sectional, and we heard the exact same thing. So I think that we have people in place and people understand that when we host, we want to make it convenient, but when we do it, we put our best foot forward and we really put out a top-notch product. All the officials, I was kind of semi-in charge of the officials, just raved about Chance and his organization and his communication with them, and the teams really appreciated our hospitality. So again, it's a lot of work. It's a labor of love, certainly. Certainly Saturday I dropped my son off at 6:30, and I think we got out there around 4. It's a long day, but it's well worth it, just the excitement and the energy that they have. So I'm just really, really proud of, again, our team as we host not only robotics but other events at high school.
I believe Mr. Resch and Mrs. Eckstein have already communicated, and they're going to have the Circle of the State with Song members come to a board meeting so that you can meet them as well as our Scholastic Art.
I guess my comment I'd like to make just briefly about the robotics event is something that Mrs. Winter works with us on often, is making sure that all students are represented. And the inclusiveness of that robotics competition was absolutely phenomenal. Not only from our school, which of course is most important to us, but all schools. There was just a very diverse group of kids and everyone working together for a common goal, and that was exciting. Even our volunteer staff, they were so good under pressure. And when something was a little bit out, I mean, they worked together and made it work. So it was just a phenomenal event, and to be able to witness, to see that many people, kids, adults, working together. And again, I appreciate the leadership from Mr. McKenzie and Mrs. Winter in allowing that, and you guys as well, and allowing us to be a part of such a great opportunity.
I just want to express my thanks, and I think I can speak for the board. I'm sure you guys feel the same way as what I'm going to say about this. First of all, I want to thank Mrs. Winter. It takes somebody with a vision and that's willing to press people and encourage people to get involved in something that's really important. And it's been decided in our office years ago that we thought it was very important for our students to have the opportunity to compete academically in extracurricular activities, like the robotics competition, like the writing competition, mathematical competition, in the arts to compete, in band and choir. It was, she's been pressing for a while. And I want to thank also our administrators who have gotten on board with that and support each other. And I know with robotics, it's Mrs. Varner and Mr. Burbank take a lead in that, but it's the whole team that's sitting out there in front of you who contribute to that event and support them in that and supporting each other. And couldn't do it without the teachers. You know, the teachers are critical. They're the ones that work with the kids day after day after day after school hours to make these events happen and to give these educational experiences to our kids. So as your superintendent and speaking for you as a board, I want to publicly thank everybody that's involved with these kinds of academic competitions after school. I think it's so valuable for our students to have those experiences and opportunities, and we've been so successful. So we're very proud of our participants and everybody that's involved with that programming. So thank you very much.
Tyler Funk was a semi-state champion Saturday, so it was a busy day, but a good day for the Indians all around. He's the first ever semi-state champion that we've ever had in wrestling. So he'll be going down to the state meet. He'll wrestle Friday evening. Then if he wins Friday, hopefully he'll go on to wrestle Saturday. But very exciting to see, knowing him, obviously personally, to see how much work he's put into it and time, and to see him and winning semi-state was a huge goal for him, and to see him on the podium with the first place ribbon and presented by his dad was pretty special. And I think a neat opportunity for both. So it was a good day to be an Indian Saturday.
So is that going to be at, is that Lucas Oil or is that at
That's at Bankers Life.
Bankers Life?
Bankers Line, yeah.
You know, it starts Friday night, right? But then
Right, he'll
also,
wrestle one match Friday, and then hopefully if he wins,
is he going to be in
he'll
the?
He gets to
move on to
wrestle
Saturday.
Saturday.
Do we know who he wrestles?
He got a good draw. It's a young man that he's beaten earlier in the year at a tournament. Obviously, everyone's good at this point.
Yeah.
Sure.
But a favorable draw to hopefully be on the podium again Saturday.
Yeah, I was worried he'd get that number one seed guy. He didn't.
He'll be
So
a
that's
medalist.
good.
That is good.
Yeah,
So if he wins Friday, he'll be a medalist no matter, right?
I believe so,
yeah. That'll be another first.
You know, he's talking about the choir and stuff, but, you know, in December, I went to several different things that they put on the band, you know, in the choir, Mrs. Waters, and then to do that and then change gears and meet, you know, because there was the seventh grade, eighth grade in high school and all those things, and then to change gears and get, it's just amazing. Those people can do the kind of things they do too, the fine arts and stuff. But, yeah, it's tremendous. Anything else on the board then? Did you have anything else?
That's all we have.
Is that all you got? Okay. Anybody from Mike, Chris? Okay, hearing none, then we got the item 53, adjournment. Need a motion?
So moved.
Oh, man.
I'll second.
Okay, any questions or comments? We don't have the ladies here tonight, and so it's a little slower than normal. Who else managed to get by? Okay, we got a motion on the floor, properly seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We're adjourned. Anybody like to address the board, come up, use the microphone, give your name. Seeing nobody